You're watching Wild About Arizona, the official podcast of the Arizona Game and Fish Department. Here's your host, Michael Coliani.
Federal and state agencies, including the Arizona Game and Fish Department, are responsible for the management of millions of acres of public land and hundreds of species of wildlife. Part of these responsibilities involve land conservation projects, promoting public access, and so much more. To learn more about these projects and how the department works alongside landowners to provide recreational opportunities and complete conservation projects, we are joined by Dan Sturla, Landowner Relations and Habitat Enhancement Program Manager. Well, thank you for joining us on the show, Dan.
Thank you, Michael.
Appreciate you being here. Really excited to chat with you about this and learn more. First off, could you just tell us a little bit about yourself, some of your responsibilities here at the department?
Sure. So I've been with the department about 15 years. Like a lot of folks here, bounced around from a few different positions before I found my true calling in life in the landowner relations and habitat enhancement program. Right now, I'm the program manager, but I've had a couple different positions in the program. Great place to be. We do a lot of stuff, and some of it can be very complicated, but at the end of the day, we can distill the program down to just two things, which is improved habitat for wildlife in Arizona and improve recreational opportunities for Arizona sportsmen. That's it. Just those two things.
So you say, hey, but you're helping out people who are enthusiastic about the outdoors and enjoying themselves around wildlife and the wildlife themselves. So it's got to be very rewarding.
It is, and having it distilled down to two metrics like that, we're able to run a very simple matrix when we prioritize our actions. You know, is this something we want to do? Hey, we can just ask ourselves, does this improve habitat or does this improve access? Then we're not going to do it if it doesn't fit into one of those two boxes, and my guys really like that.
Oh, that's great. Just being able to filter it down to the things that are really going to make an important difference on the ground. Right?
Exactly.
Speaking of which, right, how does the department work with private landowners to provide hunting opportunities? I've heard a lot about that. I just made a trip out to Yuma recently to speak with some of our folks out in that region. And I understand that you guys do a lot of work when it comes to the dove hunt out there.
Yeah, so absolutely. The dove hunt program in Yuma is definitely one of our more visible programs. So in landowner relations and habitat improvement, we have a dedicated access program. And in this program, we essentially incentivize landholders or landowners to allow recreational opportunities either to or through private lands. And we incentivize them financially. Sometimes it might be a habitat project, but at the end of the day, everything costs money. And so like the dove program is really unique where the farmers rotate their fields. And so we have to do very short duration agreements where they might have a field and they might have it ready for only 30 days, but we can pay them to provide obviously forage for the wildlife to use and then to allow the hunters to hunt the fields. That'd be a small example of what we do, but it's the same thing whether it's a dove plot in Yuma or it's a 500,000 acre ranch in northern Arizona, where we look at the benefit to our public, what it is, days of hunters, number of hunters, species that it benefits, and all those things, and it kind of helps us figure out what we can offer. Right now, we have about 81 access agreements in the state, in every region of the state.
Yeah, so so like you're saying, it's far-reaching, this program, you know, working with landowners to allow those hunting opportunities. It's not just Yuma, it's not just Buckeye, but all over the state.
Right. It could be crane hunting opportunities in Wilcox. It could be elk hunting opportunities in Williams, pronghorn opportunities in Sonoyta. Anywhere that there's large, or not necessarily large, it could be small, but anywhere that there is private land where we have the opportunity to hunt it, we'll explore that and provide that opportunity to the public.
Very exciting. And I know you brought up some pronghorn, and we're going to have to talk about that a little bit more here in a second. But so, yeah, you provide these opportunities for hunters. Tell us a little bit about this HPC program that we were chatting about.
Right. So HPC fits into, so remember, two metrics, right? It's access or habitat. HPC covers the habitat side. The Habitat Partnership Committee, it's been around since the early 90s, and it's actually propped up through Arizona statute where commissioner tags for our big game hunting species, revenue and proceeds from the sale and transfer of those tags through these conservation groups, 100% of the revenue and proceeds is donated back to the department, where in statute, those dollars are earmarked to benefit said species that raised it. Mm-hmm. For instance, if a mule deer tag brought in $100,000, that $100,000 is earmarked to be spent on mule deer improving projects only. Through the HPC, the partnership committee, the partnership side of this now, our Arizona and some of our national partners sit on this committee as an advisory group where they're able to rank and score projects. I should back up. Each year, the HPC hosts an external-facing competitive granting program where partners from around the state can submit for a project as long as it benefits said species. So a good example would be maybe the Forest Service or a rancher or a conservation group submits for maybe a water improvement and it's going to benefit mule deer. They would submit that project to the HPC, and then the committee will rank it, score it, evaluate it, and then if it's awarded, they'll obligate funding for it for completion. So the other cool thing about the HPC is that not only do we obligate 100% of the proceeds from that species for that species, but the HPC promotes a culture of a minimum of 1-to-1 match. And so that $100,000 for mule deer just turned into a minimum of $200,000 on the ground. And so it's a really cool program. It's been around since the 90s, and our local conservation partners are really proud to be part of it.
Oh, I'm sure. It's just such a wonderful opportunity for these passionate hunters, people who really, they like the Mule Deer Foundation or something like that, to really be a part of that conservation process and that success.
Absolutely, they're 100% a part of it.
That's very exciting. And speaking of exciting, I know you guys have been a part of a lot of big wildlife conservation projects across the state, including the reestablishment of a healthy herd of pronghorn in Sonoyta, that's southeast of Tucson. This included some pretty labor-intensive work. I was down there and got to see some of the fruits of that labor a couple months ago, and it includes clearing non-native trees to create more open grassland. So what's it like getting to work on these projects? I know it involves a lot of people, not just people in our agency, but others and volunteers as well.
Yeah, no, that's a really good example, and that project really got its genesis in the HPC program. One of our local partners, the Arizona Antelope Foundation, really grabbed this one by the horns. They brought federal dollars from external grants to the table to match it, but this restoration effort that you talk about, we worked with clearing fences, clearing trees, providing waters. There's a lot of moving pieces, and having a local partner on the ground like the Antelope Foundation really helps. You got to distill these projects down to tasks, like what needs to be done, whether it's compliance, whether it's hiring a contractor, different timelines, working around fire restrictions for say. So you might have one or two project managers. These are going to be high performers, proponents on the ground that want to see it done. And so it can be really frustrating. At the end of the day, project management is project management. It doesn't matter if you're putting in a solar installation or pronghorn restoration. It's kind of the same thing, but really what's fun to be part of here is how the nonprofits and the sportsmen's groups come to the table to help with that heavy lifting.
Yeah, because I've been told that there is a lot of that volunteer component is huge, and having those people who are just passionate about wildlife and want to be a part of these projects, it's got to be pretty inspiring to just see those folks come out and do all that hard work.
Yeah, it is, and it's been growing so much lately. we're not the only game in town. We have a great partnership department with Salt River Project, Department of Forest and Fire Management, and some of our national partners that all see the benefit of brush removal in Arizona. So SRP, they're looking at watershed health. DFFM is looking at protecting infrastructure and fireshed health. Well, fireshed, watershed, and wildlife ecology kind of all go hand in hand, and so we're able to just really capitalize on these relationships and leverage each other's efforts.
And that and clearing that land, clearing that brush and stuff like that, it's not easy work, right?
No, it is a lot of work. We have we probably have 24 contractors right now in Arizona, but it's not uncommon for us to attract contractors from Oregon or Washington or parts of California to help out, because we have so many projects going on, and it is such a specialized work with specialized equipment. We've got most of our Arizona local contractors at capacity, working 12 months out of the year, which is pretty impressive. So yeah, it is absolutely a lot of work.
Yeah, exactly. It's a lot of backbreaking work. And I know that this isn't the only, the pronghorn isn't the only project that you guys are working on. You've got a lot of irons in the fire. So just tell me a little bit about some projects that you're excited about, maybe some stories from out in the field that just always stick in your mind.
So we've got 3 or 4 that we could talk about, but I'm gonna try to distill this down. I'm gonna give you a big one and a small one, and if we have time, we could talk about some more big ones.
That works for me.
One of the cool ones that we're working on right now is called the Drake Antelope Corridor Project, and what's really interesting about the Drake project is that we had so many partners come to the table for different reasons, but this was a project that was driven by the department, where we literally took pronghorn antelope collar data, and we could identify a bottleneck in how they moved through the landscape. And we could see that this was an area that they were literally being bottlenecked, where they could only move around through this small transmission corridor from summer to winter range. And so using that bottleneck data, we were able to partner with, I'm going to forget somebody here, but the local Forest Service office, the rancher, NRCS, Salt River Project, all of our antelope groups, mule deer, elk, whatever, we all came to the table to identify this, and there was a lot of pieces that needed to be done, whether it was cultural compliance, making sure that the ground is clear before we run equipment through there, biological compliance, making sure we survey for any nesting birds and time of use of our work. But what got really interesting is when SRP came to the table, and the local cement factory came to the table and said, hey, we can use some of this brush that you're removing as biofuel for our concrete facility here. And so in a very short amount of time, the Drake Cement Factory was able to convert their generators to run this biofuel, and the contractor is taking the tree carcasses, transporting them to the facility, and now we've got biofuel, which now brings the cost of the job down, brings industry to the table. It's a really unique project that I think all Western states would like to emulate. We're in a really unique situation where this project was so close in proximity to the cement factory that it was a no-brainer, and we had somebody motivated to take it on. But it's a pretty cool one to brag about, and it's getting a lot of attention right now. Another one that is just kind of a fun example, and I talk to our local sportsmans about this a lot, but last April, 2 sportsmen were out shed hunting in northern Arizona, and they found an old well, a capped well, and a storage tank in the forest, and they took some pictures of it, and they sent it to me, and they said, hey, you guys need to fix this, make sure this well puts water on the landscape, it's dry. And so we were able to track down the rancher, track down the history, and it ended up being the well was put in in the early 2000s, and it got capped, and the project was never finished. And he's not ranching the area, so he has no interest in finishing the project. Mm-hmm. Well, these sportsmen said, well, we'll finish it. We'd like to see the water on the landscape for wildlife. And so they all pitched in, I don't know, somewhere, a few $1,000s, $5,000 to $10,000 each, to create what we call seed money, right? And the seed money is used to attract larger pots of money. And so they took the seed money and they applied for a Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation grant, and they got more money. So they took their $50,000 and they got another $50,000. Then they took their $100,000 and they took it to HPC, where they applied for another $100,000. And so their small contribution turned into a lot. The cultural surveys have already been completed, and these guys are planning on running this pipeline this spring. It's 100% sportsman's driven.
Wow,
These sportsmen's
amazing.
generated the money. They're going to do the labor. It's a pretty cool one. I just like the genesis of it, where
Sure.
two guys in the woods said, let's put some water on the landscape, and figured out how to do it.
That's I think that's an exciting part about working for Game and Fish, is that we really have so much investment from folks outside of the department, just people volunteering, people who love the environment, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Well, onto some big news. Even though that was some pretty great news right there. The department, we recently received an award for $24.5 million through the USDA Natural Resources Conservation Service Regional Conservation Partnership Program. It's a mouthful.
It is.
But how will this money be used, and what are some of the short and long-term benefits to wildlife across the state? I know we've discussed this at length, and it's just really, really exciting.
Yeah, this is a really big one. It's very complicated, but at the end of the day, what you need to understand is the way an RCPP works is a partner draws up an area of interest, or a polygon. In this case, it is the state of Arizona. We draw a polygon and we identify practices that we would like to see used. And so in our case, we're doing brush management, water improvements, and fence improvements. So we tell NRCS, hey, in this polygon, we're going to do, let's say, $5 million worth of these types of practices, and then you will also do those same practices in the same polygon. And so we're able to leverage each other's works. Now, what's unique about this one is that it's $24.5 million, and we did not have to provide $24.5 million of leverage for this. So Pheasants Forever is going to be the lead on this, and essentially they're going to be working with Arizona producers, primarily ranchers, to target brush management and water improvements in priority areas. So that was a very simple version with the state of Arizona, but in there we have what we consider priority areas.
Okay.
Primary, secondary. And so we've got 5 years to get it on the ground, and it's going to be really big. Short-term gains, obviously the water is going to be huge with drought and all that. But the long-term benefits are going to be, they're going to be hard to measure, but we're going to know that the fire shed and the watershed are healthy. We're going to see, a 1,200 acre mastication project. By the time the project is over and it's grown into 10,000 acres, we're going to see that generationally with herd health. And then you even see brush removal. You even see watershed benefit down the road, where literally maybe at the base of the mountain, you'll see springs that have either gone dry or started running slower will improve their production. And so the last piece that, believe it or not, is actually takes a little bit longer to see the benefit is with fence modification, where that's typically generationally learned behavior, where you can take a fence on the edge of pronghorn antelope and you can remove the fence, and the pronghorn are still going to behave as though the fence is there because they learned that it was there, and they learned where their home range is. That's generationally, and that's usually taught from mother to offspring. And so it takes about 3 generations before we see them start to realize that fence is gone. But that's pretty pretty rewarding when we see it with our collar data when they're able to start exploring these new improved corridors.
Yeah, absolutely. That's actually, you brought up a very interesting point that I've always wanted to know more about, and that's I know that volunteers and the department do a lot of work when it comes to removing fences in certain areas, and how did that all really start? Those fences were put up by ranchers generations ago, but then we realized that we don't need them there, and they can be removed to help these animals move around more freely. Or
sure. So there's a couple. There's two things going on, and pasture fences is cover the entire United States, especially the West. But there's two things that's going on. One, you might have old pasture fence that's no longer needed, and in that case, the fence is removed. But more frequent than not is we're taking old pasture fence that is not wildlife friendly, and we're going to convert it to become a wildlife friendly fence. Pronghorn antelope go under fences. They're not like deer or elk where they will jump over the fence. And so we will remove the bottom wire of the fence, and we'll replace the barbed wire with smooth wire, and we'll make sure the bottom is, I forget what it is, 15 or 18 inches off the ground, so that a pronghorn can run and drop to its knees and slide under the fence and continue running.
Okay. Yeah, so it really is just about providing wildlife with more opportunities to move around and explore their range a little bit more.
Yeah, and it works. This is something that, again, our partner Arizona Antelope Foundation is real passionate about, and they provide the volunteer workforces that come out and do these. It's really tough labor.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've heard Commissioner Sue talk about the volunteer days that her and Al have put on the landscape.
Absolutely.
You fix that wire. What happens before we improve that fence, when the bottom wire is barbed wire and they try to slide under, that barb will literally cut them.
Yeah.
And it can be detrimental. And so by just putting in that smooth wire there, they're good to go, and they'll freely cross the fence.
Very exciting, very exciting. Well, speaking of which, I know we've talked about a ton of different wildlife over this podcast, but I'm starting to end these, Dan, with just the question: what's your favorite wildlife in Arizona that you've gotten the chance to work with or perhaps improve their habitat?
That's a good question, and I'm going to take a cop out. I'm going to say it probably depends on the time of the year.
Sure.
Just what my interest is, but I think if I had to narrow it down, I'd probably pick our Coues deer in Arizona. I think it's just so interesting, the habitat range that they have, how similar but also different they are to their eastern cousins, and just some of the habitat you find them in. They surprise me more than any other species in this state, and they keep me up at night. So I'd say that's definitely my favorite species.
Very cool. Well, you're doing a lot of important work to help animals like that. So that's just very wonderful and a great opportunity to see the fruits of your labor when you go out and check it out. So that's wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Dan. We appreciate you joining us today.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thanks for having me today, Michael.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for watching. Visit us online at www.azgfd.gov.